I'm Scott Alan Miller. It is the 29th of November 2022 and this is my vlog of daily life in Leon, Nicaragua, and I'm out in the rain in La Barrio. I thought it was going to be light, but I can hear it picking up, so I'm going to try to maneuver under a tree, see if we can't keep from getting rained out. Hopefully I can do the show. It is Tuesday, and today just a work day because obviously the last 2 days I was out of the office on Sunday for Liesel's birthday in Managua, and yesterday for the trip back, and then I had a really busy afternoon. Today I'm still just playing catch up in every which possible way because we're so busy. I'm going to take a second and clean off the lens, which highlights how excited I am that the GoPro 11 has already arrived at my dad's house, and we won't have these problems once we have the GoPro 11 because it's got the hydrophobic lens. People who don't vlog like me do not understand how important the hydrophobic lens is. One drop of water hitting the lens on this and I've got to stop and clean it, or you just get that fuzz screen, right? That blur. And but I love being able to shoot in the rain. One, this is a country that rains a lot, and two, look at these gorgeous colors. Like, this is fantastic. I love having videos that look like this. It's beautiful being out here. I want to be able to come out in the rain and do more shots for you guys. And of course I have mechanisms for doing that. I can bring out my iPhone. It's waterproof, but actually it's busy. It's set up. I like doing rain recording, and I'm doing some rain recording with it right now. So it's not available for me to do this, plus the battery's pretty low. So that's not always, and I just don't like how it works for vlogging. It works when I set it up on the tripod and I'm doing a thing, or if I've got it on the Osmo, but I can't take the Osmo out in the rain. So to get these kinds of gorgeous colors and stuff, I am limited to the GoPro, and this is some of my favorite looks and feels for the recording and for me walking around. Like, for me to be out here like this is just an absolutely beautiful afternoon, and I'm having a wonderful time getting to spend my time out here doing the show. And this is Nicaragua, so when we get these drizzly days, it's perfect, right? Our hot sunny days are too warm, and when you get that downpour, there's nothing you can do. You're stuck hiding because you're just soaked. But this, where you can actually be out in it, and I can hear the rain coming. Oh boy, here we go. Hopefully it's not too much. It's been a while since we've had a really heavy one. We're gonna take a break because I might get caught in this. Okay, this tree that I'm under does a pretty good job of keeping me covered, but I'm certainly getting quite wet. If this is like it's been, this won't last for long, but we will see. And maybe, hopefully oh boy, it's really getting me. I'm not sure where I can go to. I've got to get the camera away from all the water. That's really the issue, because it's getting quite wet. And this is not a waterproof setup, so I have to be a bit conscientious of that. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about one of the things that's really important when you're moving to another country, and I'm going to be specific to Nicaragua, but this really applies a lot of places, even if you're just coming to visit for a long time. And I'm sorry I got to hold the camera so close now, because otherwise I can't really control its water. And actually, you know what? I'm going to take a moment and get some of this. I want you guys to see some of this. Look at how gorgeous all this water is coming off. This is the church at La Barrio right here. That is a lot of rain hitting that all of a sudden. What a gorgeous rain we have. I wish I had my waterproof kit so I could go out and really record some of it for you. Maybe I'll go switch the kits and come back and record more of this for you as soon as I can. I was gonna do that and then it let up, but this would be better if I get some rain footage. We will be back. And I am back. That was a ridiculous amount of rain that came down, and I got absolutely soaked and needed to change and wait quite a while. I did get some cool video of it though, I think, so I'm hopeful that at least that turned out well. Anyway, my topic for the day, the thing I wanted to talk about, because I got nothing in the news here. Actually, I'm going to turn this around just so you can see this sky. This is after the rain has left, but it gives you a good idea. We have a beautiful, beautiful afternoon here. I love when it gets rainy and dark like this, because you get all... Nicaragua is just so full of color, but so much of the time you're in that really bright tropical sun, and so that tends to make everything get kind of that Mexican filter, as we call it in America, that yellowish, brownish color and stuff. And it's not really like that. It's quite colorful. Like it's not nearly as dramatic as the movie show, because they're actually using a brown filter. But that direct, harsh sunlight that you get a lot of the time, it washes out the saturation in the trees and in the grass and in all the painted things. And it's one of the reasons why everything is so colorful naturally in Central American tradition, is because the bright sunlight that comes down so much of the time washes out the color. And so you really need extra color in everyday life to to really account for that. And so there's this tradition of everything being bright and colorful. But when you take that and you combine it with overcast or a light rain during the day, you get this deep color saturation on everything. And it's just so beautiful. You're just like, wow, it's so vibrant and exciting and gorgeous. And all the greens really pop because it's all tropical plants and stuff. And there's just so much chlorophyll and everything. It's really something. So the thing I was going to talk about today is learning a language or practicing a language, getting some exposure to a language before you travel to a place. Now, of course, you're going to Germany for the weekend. Are you going to spend time learning German? Well, if it's your one trip to Germany for your entire life and you're never traveling, well, maybe that makes sense. But in general, I mean, when you're traveling to a place for a longer period of time, you're going to be staying there for a really extended vacation. You're going to be moving, of course. It's a major event, even if you're just going for a one-time 3-month thing. Something that I think people, and when people talk about this, right? Like, this is not a surprise thing to mention, but taking time to learn a language is significant for a number of reasons. One is that it's not that hard to do, and it is really good for your personal mental development. So for nothing else, even if you never use a language, just the fact that you take the time to practice one is actually good for making your brain more fungible and able to pick up new concepts and see the world in broader ways. So it's good just to do it for yourself, for fun. You don't have to have a purpose. You don't have to be moving. You're watching this channel, you think this is interesting, you know what? Maybe pick up a language just because you can. Now, which language did you pick up? If you're not planning on ever going anywhere in particular, that's a much harder thing to do. Maybe pick one that's kind of easy or the most likely for you to use somewhere. I don't really have a good insight on that. Latin, right? Very generic. But so for people who are like, for example, coming here to Nicaragua, Spanish specifically, obviously my audience is English speaking. Spanish is such a widely accessible language. There's so many resources for it. There's so many places you can use it. You come to Nicaragua, but decide you'd like to go on to Colombia or Argentina or Mexico, right? Spain. You have Spanish and you can use that in all those places. And while the accents vary, the language varies very little. And that gives you a very powerful tool for going to those places. And what if you visit Italy in the future? Well, you're not going to be able to speak Italian just because you learn Spanish, but it will assist you. A lot of things will be familiar, and the ability to learn or to kind of muddle through another language gets easier and easier, especially if it's a related language. So for me, for example, having spent a lot of time in Mediterranean Europe and Latin America, obviously any number of Latin languages are beneficial. I actually learned a little bit of Spanish, not to the point where I would say I could speak it, and then learned Italian to the point where I could speak it, and then came back and learned Spanish again. And now way ahead on Spanish than Italian, and I've mostly lost my Italian because I don't use it. But in doing so, I got better each time. It was much easier to learn a language again. And it's something that I just really recommend. And certainly if you're going to be spending time somewhere, even if you're certain you're not going to actually learn the language, right? Of course, if you're, very young and you're decided you're moving to a new place, Nicaragua, for example, and you're completely certain you're going to be moving for the rest of your life, of course, taking the time to really focus on learning Spanish is going to be very important. And our friend April is a great example. She moved to Nicaragua when she was barely 20. I don't know, maybe she was older than 20, but she was very, very early 20s. And she came and immediately took intensive Spanish courses before anything else, learned Spanish quite well, and then has used the subsequent decade to polish that to the point where she just casually speaks Spanish and is able to interact and deal with stuff almost like a local. She'll never pass for a local, but she can interact on an extreme basis. She can make phone calls. She can just casually talk to people anywhere she is. That's really a big deal. And so if you know you're going to be making that kind of life investment in a new locality, then putting in that language learning as early as possible is super beneficial. And I recommend doing it before you go. Of course, as soon as you arrive in Nicaragua, your resources are going to be much better, and you can do a lot of, whether it's sitting in a classroom or simply going to the grocery store and dealing with everything in the local language. is going to help you a lot. And you'll hear it everywhere. And you'll see it everywhere. As I'm standing here, I'm reading signs in Spanish. And of course, it doesn't take long before you stop thinking about that, but that's an everyday thing. And of course, there's a sign, it's Spanish, right? It's everywhere. So your brain starts being in Spanish. So just everything you do is Spanish all day long. And that will help you really quickly. The reason that I bring this up now, the thing that kind of prompted this, and I actually missed this by a few days, is if you go watch my throwback episodes to 2019, what I'd been doing back in 2019, well, just real quickly, my Spanish journey a little bit. I started learning Spanish in 1990 when I lived in New York, and I was in high school. I had no language resources when I was in private school, but when I went to public school, we had foreign language as a requirement, but it was also something I had always wanted. It was a gap in my schooling, my school offering, and I had always wanted to take German. They didn't offer that, which turns out to be useful for me. But they did offer French and Spanish. I didn't particularly feel like taking French. I'm not actually sure what drove me to Spanish over French, but I ended up taking Spanish and really enjoyed it in school. I'm not good at it, but I enjoyed it. And I did the entire 4 years of high school taking Spanish. The first 3 years being very linguistically focused, and the fourth year being a partially linguistic, but also culturally focused. We did a lot of studying geography, history, socioeconomic pressures, getting to know the region. So I learned a lot of just things about the region from that. And so 4 years of Spanish in high school was quite beneficial and gave me a solid foundation to understanding the basics of how verbs work, a lot of words. But I ended high school in 1994 and have had no access to Spanish since that time. And you have to remember, or kind of just be aware, that growing up in New York in the early 1990s, as when I was in high school, you couldn't go like on TV and hear Spanish. You couldn't go to the library and get a book in Spanish or get a book on tape in Spanish. You couldn't go on the internet, obviously, because we didn't have the internet. All those things weren't available. And so the actual accessibility to hear someone's voice saying Spanish basically didn't exist. I didn't know any Spanish speakers. I didn't know of any Spanish speakers. It's not 100% true. One of my best friends in middle school that I didn't really talk to in high school, his mother spoke Puerto Rican Spanish, but I don't know how much. I don't know if she was a native speaker or if she just picked it up at some point. So I don't even know if she would have been a useful resource. I just know that she did actually have the ability to speak Spanish, but he did not. I didn't have anyone, it was like a mother of a friend that I didn't see anymore at that point. It was the nearest thing to maybe being a Spanish resource, to maybe ask a question of. But being able to hear what Spanish sounded like, it was the kind of thing that once in a while you'd hear it in a movie, casually, like a sentence said, and then they would translate it kind of thing. We couldn't go and talk to someone, like all those resources that you just assume everyone would have today did not exist then. And so learning a language was in just about useless, because there's nowhere you could go to practice it, no way that you could tell if you were saying things correctly. You could just be so bad. It was such a waste. And all you could do is have a book, right? There was no apps for it. There wasn't anything to run apps on. We didn't have those things. It was a different world. So I did absolutely no language learning for a really long time. Then somewhere around 2011, Dominic and I started really planning for a long trip to Europe. And at that point, I don't know exactly when, but somewhere in that era, I did some relatively casual getting into doing some language apps. I can't remember if DuoLingo was available then. I know I got Rosetta Stone around that time, and did Spanish, and did manage to pick some up. And while we were in Europe for a long time in 2012, I remember very significantly going from, and I definitely had practiced German as well. We went to Belgium and spoke French, and went to Germany and spoke German, and went to, we were in Italy and in Spain and in Portugal. And I remember very much being like, wow, as we went, my language kept getting better and better. When we were in Germany, I was able to interact a little bit. And when we were in Spain, both Dominic and I were like, oh, this is so easy because it's Spain. But even in Portugal, I remember being able to read the signs. And in France, I was able to read the signs. At that point, I was starting to have practiced different languages enough that I was starting to get some noticeable improvement. And then in 2015, we knew we were moving to Spain. And then pretty quickly, we knew we were moving from Spain to Panama. And then we decided to move on to Nicaragua. And so we knew we had this huge amount of Spanish need coming up. And so I put in a lot of work during that era, and got DuoLingo and got Rosetta Stone and just leapt forward on my Spanish. And then, of course, living here in these countries also caused a leap forward in Spanish, obviously. And so the combination was suddenly I had a fair amount of Spanish. Then almost immediately we moved to Greece and some other places, and I kind of stopped using my Spanish because I was focusing not so much on language learning, but it's hard to be like practicing Spanish and then go out into Greece kind of thing and into Romania. So there was a lot of just a halt in my language learning at that time. But then the following year, we knew we were going to be going to Italy. So for a lot of, right after we were in Romania, I put in a ton of work on DuoLingo, and I'd done a bit of DuoLingo before that, but in Italy, or just before Italy, I put in a tremendous amount of work and actually made it through the entirety of DuoLingo Italian, to the point where when we went to Italy, I actually felt confident having conversations and was able to use Italian functionally. And that was really exciting. I mean, I completed DuoLingo Italian, and right after that, when we left Italy, I did the same thing again and managed to complete DuoLingo Spanish. I'm not exactly sure when I finished it, but somewhere right in there. And at the time, they were much smaller programs than they are now. Since then, they have grown them significantly. So somewhere around this time, and it took me a year or two to do that. So we left Italy in 2017, and so by 2019, roughly, I actually had a streak on DuoLingo of something like 250, 280 days. It was something ridiculous. And when we came to Nicaragua, I think it was, is actually when I lost it, because we were so busy. It was the first time I had traveled in a while, and we were so busy with the trip that my DuoLingo lapsed, and I lost my streak, and it was very, very depressing. But I was here in Nicaragua, and it was very exciting. Right after I returned, it could have been a month or two, but pretty much right after we returned from Nicaragua, I decided that we were really focused on returning to Latin America, and probably Nicaragua, and I put in a huge amount of effort. I really got into DuoLingo. DuoLingo like quadrupled, I don't know, the size of the program was so much bigger. So I put in a huge effort and decided I was really going to do it. And it turns out I have not missed a day since that time, and I just passed my 1,000 days streak on DuoLingo. Actually, at the time I'm recording this, it's like 1,010. So I'm a bit past it. I missed the date to show you guys, but I'm recording, so I'm only missed it by a few days on this video, but 1,000 days. I'm so excited that I've managed to put in this much day after day after day work on DuoLingo. And so the kind of the thing I wanted to talk about today is, yes, I think you should be studying a language, even if you're just casually traveling and there's no like need to have a language, even if you're going to a place that speaks a lot of English. Learning the language, learning any amount of the language helps give you an appreciation for the place. It helps you read the signs. It helps you feel more a part of a place. Even while just visiting. Like when I go to France, I'm glad that I'm able to read quite a bit. Not a ton, but enough that it's, you know, I don't feel completely out of sorts. I don't feel completely disconnected when I'm there. And that really, it really helps in so many ways. And I recommend doing that. And DuoLingo, of course, is free. So it's a great resource. They've put so much effort into it. I'm not sponsored in any way. I don't think they sponsor anything, right? They're a nonprofit. But it's a tool. There's other tools. Some people love Rosetta Stone, for example. I've had good luck with that, but I like DuoLingo better. And there's drops. I've paid for that in the past, but it's just for memorizing words. Like, it's okay, but I like DuoLingo better. These free apps are so good, and if you put in some effort, right, just do a little bit every day. Build a streak. Do 1 or 2 lessons a day. Don't go crazy. Don't frustrate yourself. Just do a little bit. And if you did it for a month, you'll notice. If you do it for 6 months, you will really notice. You come to a place like Nicaragua, and you're going to have so much more visibility into things. You're going to hear people saying things. You're going to see signs that say stuff. You're going to just be able to participate and notice what's going on so much better. You'll have so much more appreciation for where you are and what you're doing. It'll make things more comfortable, more fun, more relaxed. It really is something that can benefit you a lot. And then if you are in a position where you're going to be staying for longer, it's not just a vacation, but it's a move, or you're considering a move, or maybe you're just moving to the region. Wow, can it make a difference? And it gives you a jump start. Of course, you're going to want to do other things once you arrive, Duolingo is not going to get you all the way to being a fluent speaker. That just isn't going to, it's not realistic. Maybe someday they'll get the program to that point, but not now. But you're not going to run out of Duolingo. I've got a 1,000-day streak, which is built on several 100-day streaks. Plus I completed Spanish at some point before one of those streaks, and I've completed Italian, and I'm still years away at my current pace from completing the Spanish that they have today. And they're always adding more. So it's huge. If you had 5 years and you knew you were going to do it every day, you still wouldn't have much hope of coming close to finishing the Duolingo course in that time. So don't feel like you need to wait because there's not going to be enough to do. There's so much to do. I really recommend it. Give yourself that jump start. And then when you're here, maybe take a break. Maybe keep doing it. If you're going to move, keep doing it. Right? Make it just part of your routine and find other resources. I'm hoping to talk about that soon. Just talk about some ideas and ways that you can do that. Whether it's classes or going to the grocery store or just, living here, how you handle that. It depends a lot on you, but that start, like seriously, I know a lot of people move and they'll ask questions. Can I get by without knowing Spanish? Yeah, of course you can. It's really not that hard. That's actually one of the hardest things, is that it's too easy to not have to learn. I almost wish I had to learn more, because then I would put more effort into it and I would learn faster. But I'm also appreciative of the fact that it's not a failure while I'm waiting to do that, right? I'm able to ease into it. But because it is so easy to move, and especially if you're looking at like the beaches, especially if you're looking at San Juan del Sur, but also here in León or Granada, you could totally never speak Spanish. You could speak not a word of Spanish, and honestly, you'll probably be okay. There'll be moments where you're annoyed, and certainly a lot of things where it'll be a negative, like it's just a lot more work to do things if you live here and don't speak Spanish. But can you get by? Absolutely. It is not the huge problem that you would imagine it is, because while most people don't speak English, enough do. And honestly, having been all over the world, there are very few times that you actually need to carry on a conversation. Now, if you're taking a tour and you want a history lesson, yeah, you're going to miss it if it's not in your language. But beyond that, day to day, you can go to a restaurant and point at menus. People can ask questions. They can show pictures. You can use Google Translate. There's so many ways that you can make yourself functional without speaking a language at all these days, that it's really no issue at all, especially in places that speak Latin languages or Germanic languages. Either of those, you're going to be able to muddle through so easily. So don't fear the language. But we tell people not to fear the language so often that I think it also tends to send a message of don't worry about learning it. And I don't think that's the right message. The message is don't avoid travel because you haven't learned the language, but don't avoid learning the language just because you're able to travel so easily. Yes, the world has gotten to be an easier place. It's a safer place, but also there's just a lot of benefits. There's so much. Your experience where you go could be so much more. Give yourself that advantage. Even if it's just a little bit. Don't worry about making it a big thing. Don't worry about being conversational. Don't worry about getting past some bar. Just do what you can and make your enjoyment that much more. And it's good for you. It's not costing you money. It's a little bit of time. I like to do it just before I go to bed. I also, recommend anytime you're in the bathroom and you're going to TikTok or something, do Duolingo instead. What a great way to use your brain instead of watching people dance. I'm not saying that's not fun. Like, that's cool, but there are better uses of your time, just saying. But that's kind of my take. I think it's important. And we're going to talk about it in another upcoming episode. That one will be a little bit more interesting. But this one, I wanted to get in there and say, I have a 1,000-day streak on Duolingo. That is so much work on my side that I'm taking an episode to brag about it. It is what it is. Live with it. All right. Thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to support the channel and my Duolingo habit. I do actually pay for Duolingo just because my whole family uses it every day. Dominica's on more than a year streak. I think Luciana's on over a year streak now as well. Paul uses it. Liesl uses it, but they don't use it as much. But we've got huge amounts on it. No, I cannot share my profile with you. For some reason, my Duolingo broke and all that stuff isn't available to me. It's not that I don't want to. It's not possible. And there's a little kid saying hi. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. I will put the link below. And share on social media because I don't have Facebook and that stuff. I will see all of you tomorrow.